While attempting to get the Lance of Longinus in 1944, Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford, and his Oxford archaeologist friend, Basil Shaw, Toby Jones, are captured by Nazis. After escaping, Indy gets on a train where he finds out that the lance is fake, Basil was also captured, and the existence of the Antikythera, also known as the Archimedes dial, held by astrophysicist Jorgen Voller, Mads Mikkelsen. 25 years later, Basil's daughter Helena Phoebe Waller-Bridge continues her father's research, dragging along Indy for one last adventure. I took the news of another Indiana Jones movie with much love and wariness. For starters, I know that Harrison Ford's age will be an issue, which I hope it wouldn't mean he'll pass the torch to someone else. I watched the original movie so much I hold this character very dear to my heart to see this change. Although they did not pass the torch yet, the movie was not as good as it could be for three reasons. 1. A passive protagonist. 2. Unlikable characters. And 3. The plot. I understand Harrison Ford's age was a major hurdle. He wouldn't have been able to do much action because of it. But that doesn't mean his character had to become a passive one. Instead, our driving force is Helena. The person who changes more is Helena. The character mostly front and center is Helena. We're led to care about Helena more than Indiana Jones in his own movie. Though there were some parts I did like, as a whole, Indiana Jones's character was kicked down and set aside. In the previous Indiana Jones movies, he's a static character. But just because a character is a static one doesn't mean he or she isn't an active one. In the original movies, he's the one that makes the plans, goes on adventures, beats the bad guys. But in Dial of Destiny, Indy is pushed aside, reacting to everything that is happening, crying for help for the good majority of the beginning. He makes decisions and acts upon them, but only after a different driving force makes him. He isn't acting and thus creating that driving force that would make him react. From the inciting incident being Helena's proposal, to Claybar, Boyd Holbrook's trigger-happy pursuit, Indiana Jones isn't actively making a decision. The adventure was set forth by Helena. A driving force for this adventure was both Helena for taking the dial from Indy and Jorgen Voller and his goons' threats that add stakes towards Indiana Jones. From there on out, his goal has been to retrieve the dial from Helena, but complications arise leaving Indy to stay for the ride. What I'm trying to say is that for the most part, a lot of the story felt more as if Indy was reacting than actual things occurring due to the protagonist's actions. When we first begin the story in present time, nothing Indiana Jones does sets forth this adventure. Helena already had a plan to sell the dial, leaving Indy to chase and react to her actions. Helena used Indiana Jones just to get the dial. Indiana's actions didn't even lead Voller to know the location of the dial or who possesses it. Voller is already in pursuit of Helena, leaving Indy to get hit in the crossfire. For the most part, he remains passive throughout the movie. There are a few exceptions where he has a plan or solves a puzzle, but altogether, he remains passive throughout the movie. Second, unlikable characters. Since Helena's introduction, she didn't sit right with me. I decided to watch the movie a second time, just in case it was just because subconsciously I was hoping she wouldn't be the next Indiana Jones. However, my feelings didn't change. From the moment she stole the dial from Indy, to being slightly obnoxious, demanding the dial to sell it, I wasn't rooting for her. Pair her next to Teddy, and you got two characters I don't root for, especially when they talk negatively about Indy. The scene that sums it all together is in Tangier. Her character really stands out there. She's in it for the money, not minding if she has to play dirty in order to accomplish her goals. It is in this scene that I ultimately made the decision that her character was not likable. Lastly, plot. The audience had to break the suspension of disbelief hugely. This was the same problematic downfall Kingdom of the Crystal Skull had. In that movie, it was aliens, and in Dial of Destiny, it's time travel. Somewhat. As Helena explained to us with the card trick, which was only added to have this payoff where no matter how you turn the dial, it only takes you to the siege of Syracuse. So, time travel. Just not freely. The problem is when our suspension of disbelief is broken greatly, we end up unamused and more confused than anything. Although the other Indiana Jones movies had magical elements in their movie, it didn't break our suspension of disbelief because of how it was delivered. It was given to us slowly and with explanations, or sometimes the magical element was just a scene or two. In Dial of Destiny, we understand the dial has to deal with fissures in time, but don't actually see it until Act 3, and don't understand about the trick deck until Helena points it out. But how does she know? Well, I'm not entirely sure. The whole plot is centered around this MacGuffin, having recycled scenes from previous Indiana Jones movies. You got a father with extensive research of an artifact where their child is the only one that cracks the code and ultimately finds it. You got Indiana Jones getting the other artifacts, only for them to be stolen by the antagonist. You got the antagonist who manages to use the artifacts around Act 3 but ends up dead. You got Nazis. Okay, that one wasn't fair. You also got Short Round. Well, maybe not. Apart from that, the movie ends with a nice heartfelt moment with Marion, Karen Allen. This scene did make me emotional, as it recreated a scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark. However, the movie ends without explaining certain things. Indy is still wanted for murder, right? Helena still owes money to people, right? And by the way, how hard did Helena hit Indy to knock him out until he's back in bed? Part of these things don't come back, so it makes no sense why bring it up in the first place. With the exception of the trick deck, there aren't a lot of payoffs that left me satisfied. Before I end the video, I do want to say some good things about the movie. The opening was beautifully crafted. There was a smile on my face throughout. I know there was de-aging and stunt work involved, but it was very well executed. This is the real Indy. But that was short-lived. We go to the present times and just beat up Indy. With his age, separation papers, the death of his son, to retirement, my smile disappeared. Another thing I liked was John Williams returning to score the movie. That was awesome. Overall, Indiana Jones' Dial of Destiny was sadly not Indy's story. It was Helena's, an obnoxious protagonist that doesn't care about antiquities, therefore doesn't have the same mentality as Indy's love for antiquities and what he stands for. Although she is intelligent, her behavior in the field has her ego way over her head. And even though Indy does also have an ego of his own, he at least isn't obnoxious. Although there were some nice scenes like the opening and closing image, the rest of the movie lacked the essence of what Indiana Jones stands for, which was partly due to Indy being passive, the story, and the supporting characters.